I'm an anthropologist of media and communications technologies. I'm really interested in what happens when the communications technologies that we rely on a day-to-day basis fail and break down, from smartphones today all the way back to radio and telegraph systems. I'm part of the Visiting Scholars program here at the Bodleian Libraries. My research is using the Marconi Archives to explore and investigate early wireless operators' records of radio interference potentially caused by space weather. The sun ejects charged material out into space that can interact with our upper atmosphere, which is the region that radio signals rely on in order to transmit messages. When people think of space weather, they often think of the Northern Lights, which is a really good example because that is arising from this electromagnetic activity. I'm studying the Marconi collection, which is over 250 objects that are located in the History of Science Museum. And it's also got an archive based in the Bodleian Libraries, which consists of a whole range of different materials related to the Marconi company, which was an early radio company owned and operated by Guglielmo Marconi, one of the pioneers of early radio. In 1901, his work was celebrated for sending the first radio message across the Atlantic from Poldhu in Cornwall to Newfoundland in Canada. You have telegrams, letters, photos, Marconi's diaries, and notebooks from staff and engineers. Early radio communications relied on Morse code, and the signals from radio would actually be printed out on a device called a Morse inker. Sometimes marks on the Morse inker tape would be completely unreadable, and they would mark these down in their reports and logbooks as an X, an indecipherable message. So at the time of writing these documents, they had no idea that this was caused by space weather. So you can see here that they had half of the signals were unreadable due to interference. Marconi himself would regularly record the frequency and intensity of X's in his diary. So here you can see that he's marked no X's, 9 p.m. on this week in March he had X's. And there were also loads of efforts to actually try and reduce this interference. So they developed things called X stoppers. Here we have one letter that was sent to Marconi. So they say, "I'm exceedingly glad to be able to report that our new X stopping device for long wave working is proving extremely useful." But this interference wouldn't really be eliminated until the development of the FM band in the 1930s, and much later more moving over the radio to satellite and digital. So one thing that really jumped out to me during my work in the archives was that they invite us to reflect on what it means to live increasingly technology-dependent lives on a planet that's only 8 light minutes away from the sun. So many of the technologies that we rely on today for communications are also vulnerable to space weather, from satellites to the internet. So what would we do if the digital world suddenly switched off?